Yes, good morning, all my dear participants. It's I just welcome you all for the last day of AICT sponsored Atal FDP on trends and challenges in electrical vehicles. So it gives me an immense pleasure in welcoming today's speaker, Mr. Venkateshalu. He is working as a mechanical design and development engineer R&D at Genetics India Private Limited. His field of exposure is in electrical vehicles and pneumatic products where design, testing methodologies, certification standards, and ISO related workflow documentation preparation are carried out. His past experience in Ampere electrical vehicles as junior mechanical engineer R&D, where he carried out design, testing, and vehicle approval certification. He had completed his bachelor degree in Kumaraguru College of Technology. He also holds certification in SolidWorks, FEA Linear and Thermal Analysis, CATIA, MATLAB, Simulink Control Block Modeling, and so on. His presence among us is a gifted moment. On behalf of the Department of Mechanical Engineering and Sri Ishwar College of Engineering, we welcome you, sir, for the program. Now, the session is yours, sir.
Thank you. So, good morning, one and all present here. Myself, Venkat, as I have already made an intro. So, that was my actual experience at which has been carried out, and I am presently under progress recent. So, with the welcome note, I just thank each and every faculties and students that who are all available here for this utilization of the valuable moments regarding the EV's basic terminologies, how it has been implemented in the testing zonal area, and how it has been interlinked over there. So, what are the key considerations at which we have to take while designing a vehicle, and we are submitting it for an approval? And what are the actual tests or the test methodology process under which standard codes does do those tests actually prefer? So these are the actual overview session that which we are going to go through. So our major key consideration will be focused on testing homologation process. What are the actual key consideration factors at which we have to prefer while we are deciding a design concept of a vehicle, and when we subject it to a vehicle, what are the actual referral standard at which we have to seek on to. So with reference to that, what are the actual methodological considerations do the other third parties or the test agencies consider while we are submitting a vehicle for the approval of the development stage? So this is the actual factors and the key consideration points that which we have to focus, and we are going to see in detail. So can I just share my screen? So kindly just convey whether is that visible to you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I have just broadcasted my screen. So is it visible to you?
Sir, not it, sir. Yes, sir. Now it is visible.
Yeah, you'll get it. Yeah. So I'm just getting inside the PPT. Visible to everyone?
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
Yes. So I'm going to start on with my PPT. So in general, we are, as I've said, we are going to deal with the e-vehicles, the testing and certification, and what are the actual key consideration factors that a testing agencies prefer. So in general, when we are designing and developing a vehicle, and before submitting a vehicle for the approval, when we are undergoing any testing, at design and development stage, what are the key consideration factors that we have to majorly focus on as a primary set factor before submitting a vehicle to the testing agency? So first is the vehicle categorization. If you are making a vehicle, either it can be a two-wheeler or a three-wheeler or a four-wheeler, either an IC engine category or a hybrid vehicle or a pure electric vehicle, whatever it can fall under. So those kind of things we have to just get in categorization consideration, because the two-wheelers, three-wheelers and four-wheelers, since they are differentiated on the basis of major factors such as loads, passenger carrying capacity or goods carrying capacity, or the speed. So on basis of these kind of major consideration parameters, along with the motor power in case of your drive your vehicle with the motor, or in case of your IC engine output power, you drive. So on the basis of those consideration key parameters, there are what the actual CMVR is telling us. I mean, the Central Motor Vehicle Act of 1999 is telling us whatever the vehicles under which category, either it can be a 2 or a 3 or a 4-wheeler while we are designing, we have to majorly focus on under what consideration category does that vehicle fall. If you are taking on a 2-wheeler and a 3-wheeler, it generally falls under L category, and the L category has been subdivided into various major other categories, which we are going to discuss in the upcoming slides. And the M category is generally a 4-wheeler, either it can be of the passenger carrying capacity and of the N category vehicles, which is specially designed for the goods carrying capacity alone. And the T and O categories are the tiller vehicles or the heavy terrain vehicles, which are designed specially for the special purpose vehicle. So whenever we are submitting a vehicle for the approval, they majorly ask whether what kind of category does your vehicle fall. Either is it of L category, M, N, T or O. So you have to be very keen while you're categorizing a vehicle and when you're designing and developing a vehicle. So this labeling is very important for, and when you're going for the 3-wheeler categorization of vehicles, since my major domain area is on 2-wheeler and 3-wheeler, I am just going to focus primarily on that, testing and certification relevant to that. So when we are taking a 2-wheeler or 3-wheeler, it generally is being categorized as a subzone into the L category vehicle has been subzoned into various other subcategories such as L1, L2, L3, L4 and L5. So these are the 5 major other subdomain areas that which fall under L category vehicles. So in L1, when you see, it is of the 2-wheeler vehicles which is less than 50 kilometers per hour speed. But this is of the old amendment. What the new amendment says is, it has been revisioned recently. The new amendment that which it says is the 2-wheeler vehicles which is of less than 70 km per hour will be declared as the L1 categorization of vehicle, which has not yet been amended commercially through the web publications. So this is the first major point. And the second major point is the 2-wheeler vehicles which is more than 50 kmph. Now, since I have said that the speed has been revised to 70 kmph, it will be less than or more than 70 kmph. So this has been recently amended by Ministry of Road and Transport Highways, MOD, we will be calling it as. So these are the major other key considerations as per ISO clause 3883 is to 1977. And when you take on with the L3 categories vehicles, they will generally fall under 3-wheeler basic model vehicles, where the 3-wheel vehicle will be less than 70 kmph. Whereas an L4 and L5 will be greater than 70 kmph. So this is a recent amendment category that which the Ministry of Road and Transport Highways has been amended. That is at 2019 to 20, that financial year. So this is the major primary consideration factor that which we have to look onto while we are designing and developing a vehicle. So whenever you're even documenting for any approval process, they will be asking the first question as, under what category does your vehicle fall? So these are the things that which you have to majorly focus on with. And also your next one will be of your load and speed. So this is just for your reference because since we are going to generally deal on with the 2-wheeler and 3-wheeler, this is just for your personal understanding. As I've already said, it's of M and N categories vehicles generally refer to the 4-wheel electric vehicles of either the passenger carrying capacities and the goods carrying capacities. This is for your general reference, that which you shall know as an additional information. So in M, basically it is referred to as the passenger carrying capacity. And in N, it is generally referred to as goods carrying capacity as per ISO clause. So as they have already mentioned, it is the 4-wheeler vehicles of not more than 8 seaters plus drivers, nothing but your M1 categorization of vehicles. And your M2 is nothing but it is exceeding not more than 5 tons. Now they have been incorporated into your vehicle weight. And same, whereas for M3, it is nothing but exceeding more than 5 tons, which is nothing but your heavy capacity vehicles with more than like your mini does, your tempo truck travelers, or for your special occasions that wherever you're traveling, the tourist vehicles, what you call it. So those categories generally can be taken as the M3 category vehicles, your buses. So that also fall under M3 category vehicles. And for your N category vehicles, it is completely of goods carrying vehicles, which is same as that of the M1 category vehicles, which has been differentiated under the basis of the tonnage capacities. They have mentioned N1 vehicles with not more than 3.5 tons. It is of four-wheeler, or it can be even a multi-wheeler. It can be even of T and O. But apart from that consideration, if anything that which meets this criteria will fall under N1 categorized vehicles. And N2 and N3 will be as per the specified range. It can be 3.5 to 12 tons and greater than 12 tons. This is just for your understanding. So next, you have designed a vehicle, you have just set your load, speed, and also your power output of the motor that which is available in your MORTH, Ministry of Road and Transport Highways website, as well as in your ARIA standard rules and CMBR 1989 Act. So on the basis of this three common rule, they will be you will be defining your load, speed, your power output, and based upon that you will be declaring the weight also, and based upon that it should fall under, as I have said, under the basis of subcategorized rules, say for example L1, L2, L3, L4, whatever they have given, that should fall under that category. So if that falls under the category only, your vehicle shall be able to proceed for further test procedures. So this is one point, and the next point is that what are the testing agencies that which is available currently in India, and where you can take the vehicle for the approval submission. So these are the popular major testing agencies that which is available in India. It's Automotive Research Association of India, which is available at Kothur, Pune. That they will be majorly carrying out all the relevant applicable test standards and certification. And the next one is the ICAT, which is available at Manesar, Haryana, and it is International Center of Automotive Testing. And the next one is, if that those two are very distant, you can preferably try for any near one, means you can go for Global Automotive Research Center, which is available at Sri Perumbudur at Chennai. So it was been under development stage when I was working as a former employee at Ampere Vehicles, and I believe that it would have been developed now. So these are the three major testing agencies that is available in here in all over India. So after getting your vehicle certification from these three testing agencies only, you can be able to legally produce the vehicles for the production stage, and you can run it on road. So this is the general applicable statutory regulatory requirements that what the government is keeping. So that is one thing. And what are the actual departments in testing and agency with which they currently prefer to the two-wheeled and three-wheeled battery electric vehicles? We are going to look about that in detail. So your first department, when you're going for the vehicle approval submission, you have to get into the VEL, Vehicle Evaluation Laboratory. There what they'll be doing is, they'll be noting under what category vehicle you have been feeded your vehicle, either is it L1, M1, N1, like that, based upon your vehicle categorization that what you gave. And then they will be making the physical test, like length, a measurement of length, width, height, and the ground clearance, your wheelbase, whatever the basic parameters that which affect your vehicle structure. They will be seeing that fitment dimension, whether is it applicable as per the rule, CMBR rule, or the AIS rule, or the Indian standards rule. So that as per that rule, they will be just checking the physical dimension test, and if it meets the requirements, they will make the vehicle pass. Or if the vehicle is exceeding that limit, and if it's under that category, either they will be having two cases. They will tell you to update that this vehicle does not belong to this category. The next one is your vehicle test may fail. So these are the two major key considerations that what will actually happen in common test agency procedure. So this is the actual thing that which happened in the current situation. And the next one will be of your range test, that which will be carried out at Vehicle Dynamic Research Evaluation Laboratory, which is currently available at Ahmednagar with the test track. So they will be carrying out to VRDE there, and then a Vehicle Research and Development track, and there they will be testing your range test in practical. They will be running your vehicle from your full charge, and until your vehicle is completely discharged, it has your battery has been completely drained. They will be completely running on your vehicle, and they will be declaring your on-road range. So this is one key consideration factor what the testing agencies will actually do. The third one will be of fuel consumption. In case if your vehicle is an IC engine vehicle, they will be actually determining the brake fuel consumption or the specific fuel consumption of your IC engine. How much does your fuel consume per either it can be per liter or it can be a minute, whatever it is applicable as per norms. And the next one will be of brake test. This is the most important test because most of the things, if your brake is not safe and if it exceeds your stopping distance, which we call it, example, if you're running a vehicle from point A and if you're applying a brake from point B, from point B, how much distance does it cover from point B to the 0th position? That is what is called a stopping distance. And that stopping distance from the end position, whenever it's exceeded that end position, that should be covered within the range as per specified in the rule of Indian Standards 14664. So that rule we have to take and we have to refer, we have to calculate on the basis of our vehicle weight, our vehicle speed, and as per our vehicle power output. So these are that's what I have said. It's of L, M, and N category vehicles. Now again plays a very vital role in this upcoming test also. So the next one will be of gradability test. Gradability test is nothing but a slope test. Either if your vehicle at one full loaded capacity is capable and your power output or your torque, whatever you have been defined, and if it's achievable at your output end, and if you're carrying a maximum load capacity of your declared range on the vehicle, you have to just run it and then you have to just take it over to the slope. And whether they will be testing whether is a vehicle capable of climbing the grade or the hill climbing, like you can say it as like a hill climbing. So how much ability does it have to carry the full loading maximum design load as per your declaration from the start point till the grade end point? They'll be checking that through gradability test. And pass by knowledge test is they'll be having a set range. Say for example, it can be a 75 dB or 80 dB or 85 dB depending upon the vehicle category's power outputs and your battery capacity. They'll be just conducting a pass by noise test. And your noise should be within that limit. Your dB, your decibel limit should be within that specified range as per IS 3074. So these are the actual basic tests where VEL will be carrying out. And for the next test will be with AED, Automotive Electronics Department. There, what they will be doing is they will be just, instead of going for on-road, they will be pre-checking it in the chassis dynamometer. They will be just rigidly clamping your vehicle on the chassis dynamometer, and they will be carrying out what are the actual permissible dynamo tests that which can be carried out. Say, for example, the same range, what is actually getting in dynamometer considering the coefficient of friction of the roller, and what is the actual difference that which we are getting on the track, whether is that meeting the particular roller requirement, and what is the differences between them. Those kind of tests will be carried out on comparison. And also, because based upon that, how much electric consumption does your battery achieve? Your battery is capable of draining from 100% to 0%. When your state of charge, your SOC, what you call it as, it is nothing but your battery when it's 100%, you call it as your 100% COC, SOC, state of charge. And when your battery has been drained to 0%, you will be calling it as 0% SOC, state of charge, and 100% DOD, depth of discharge, which is nothing but your battery has completely drained. So that is the actual parameter that which has been labeled over here. So that kind of relevant test, how much consumption does your battery take? That will be accounted in AED, Automotive Dynamics Laboratory. And the next one is your battery relevant test as a component. Say for example, your battery should be should be ability or should be able to withstand the major penetration test when you're applying a sudden load of 2G or 3G or 6G. You're subjecting it to any vibration chambers of 9G or 10G. You're applying a shock of G force, some sudden force you're giving. Your battery casing should be able to withstand that for a very higher range as per the standard requirement, and it shouldn't fail very easily. If it fails within the expected limit, then your battery component certification won't be approved. So these kind of tests will be carried out in AED laboratory. And the construction and safety test, whether is your cables are all well shielded, are you very well safe, or you are well eligible to work in a very safe zone? How far your vehicle is safe in order to ensure the work friendly nature? and is that everything which is completely shielded without any wire defects or damages, and those kind of tests will be carried out. Whether is there any hazardous or warning symbols that which are available on the high voltage key components. Those kind of tests will be carried out with construction functionality and safety test. Either it can be of AS038, that which I have already mentioned. And the major test that which every vehicle will fail is on EMI and EMC test. That will be majorly carried out. What they'll be doing is they'll be completely subjecting your vehicle chamber. They'll be giving a high frequency signal where your vehicle will be in a dynamic running condition, completely clamped at each and every end. Due to the external electrical or the signal frequency disturbances, your electric components shouldn't fail or shouldn't fluctuate. So that kind of test will be carried out in EMI and EMC test, where the AED will take responsibility for that. So the next one will be of SHL department, where they will be carrying out how your vehicle's lights, your other safety components, say for example like horns, your reflectors, and your wheel rims, your tires, with respect to your ground reference, within how much height it has been located, whether it is as per the expected range, and whether they'll be carrying out the photometry test in order to check whether the opponent is being safe while whether is that damaging their drivability, or is there any causing any like blurrishness within the eyes. So those kind of things will be carried out in photometric test lab. They'll be just subjecting your vehicle in a dark room. They'll be turning on your vehicle, and your lights will be kept on. Due to the photometric reflection of your lights, if any opponent driver comes and if he gets his vision bleached, so at that point, if that is too much of a reflex angle, and if it's too much of intensity is very high, then your vehicle components won't be approved. And if the vehicle's installation height of that headlamp or tail lamp or the indicators isn't within the rule as per AS009, your vehicle won't be approved for further certification. So this is the actual safety related test. In order to say, it is in the name itself. Safety related test is nothing but it shouldn't harm the driver in any point of view, and your vehicle should be very safety while you're running. Your wheel rim should be well certified. It should run an expected life cycle, and your tire should be very safe, and your tire should be tested to, it will be tested to various methodology, and it should be safe. All the safety mechanical relevant tests and come electrical reference photographic test. Photographic test will be carried out at SHL laboratory, safety and homologation laboratories. So your protection will be defined by this laboratory only. So these are the three major laboratories under which the testings will be carried out for the two-wheeler and three-wheeler or the four-wheeler electric vehicles. So after all your vehicles testing has been completed, they'll be issuing you these three certificates, which you have to record it throughout for your general purpose. It is one COP, the next one is TAC, and the third one is TRC. So COP is nothing but your conformity of production. I'll commit to you at final. Before that, we'll move on to TAC and TRC. So in TAC and TRC, what they'll be doing is, as I've already said, under various departments, you'll be having on with various challenges and various tests. You have to pass that. So that observation result, whatever you have been getting on the basis of test standard that what the actual test agency is conducting, those kinds of test observation result, whether this value is lesser than this value, those kind of comparative test result as per the standard norms will be recorded and issued in TRC, test report certificate. That is the first one. The next one is your type approval certificate. Type approval certificate is, say, as a designer and a development engineer, you're defining a specification, you're making a drawing for each and every component, you're making a vehicle component drawing, and you're issuing it to test agency for verification process. They will be just verifying whether is it as per the drawing. That drawing should be within the Indian standards rule with which all the tests will be carried out. It can be an electrical circuit drawing, it can be a mechanical installation fitment drawing, and it can be of any parameters like vehicle weightment, that whatever you are giving, like front axle weight or rear axle weight. All the key parameters should be covered in the drawing, and the test agency will be referring all these parameters as per whether, and they will be checking it practically also, as I've already told you, whether the key consideration or the points, whatever they are recording, is as per your drawing or with more or less of 1% deviation from your drawing. They will accept and they will approve, and they will be issuing it, that drawing with seal, through type approval certificate. So this is one thing, and based on these two requirements, they will be issuing a conformity of production for each and every safety components. Whatever the things has been approved, conformity of production is like your license renewal. If they're issuing a COP for your vehicle, and if the validity period is starting from this today's date, and if it's ending to next year of September 2022, means after September 2022, the same certificate won't be eligible. Based on this certificate COP number, you have to get a renewal extension, like how your license or other stuff is expiring, you're renewing it now. The same thing will be happening over here also. So that conformity of production is nothing like you have to renew your safety products in such a way that you're continuously making that model. It is running on road. This can be used from this date to this date. And after that date has been expired, you have to again, they will be checking whether you're running your vehicle with the production as per the certification standards or the tested parameters at which you have given earlier. So those kind of tests, those kind of parameters will be monitored through COP. When you have been already tested your vehicle under TAC and TRC at the first stage itself, they would have recorded the observation result. That same observation result should come at the next year also. If there is any changes in the component, and if you are making any modification, means how will they know? How will they know? They don't know. So they also have to monitor your vehicle is being used as per the standard regularly without any deviation difference. So that they have to, the test agency has to monitor. So that for that purpose only they are giving you the conformity of production. That is one point. And you are while you are renewing, they will be just comparing your old certificate, your old specification that which you have submitted earlier, and old versus new, they will be comparing it. And if those same values are meeting out, which was as like earlier, means your vehicle will be subjected to the extension certificate to the validation period up to next year. Say from example, if next year your vehicle is getting expired and it has been again extended to 2023, and from 2023 to 2024 you have to get another extension. So it continuously goes on. So for that only they will be issuing the COP, conformity of production. So those are the major three considerations what the test agency will actually provide us in order to make our vehicle register, and based on that record we have to make the mass productions and we have to run it on road. And recently you would have heard the FAME subsidy schemes, faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles. So what does that actually mean is, if you're making a vehicle worth rupees 1.2 lakhs of electric two-wheeler vehicles, and if a government, if it has met all your test requirements, and if you're passing it, and if you're getting a CMVR approved from any test agencies, at that point you are claiming the FAME subsidy from the central government. So what they'll be doing is they'll be just affording the FAME amount for each and every categorized vehicles as per the central government statutory norms. So if example, if you're having, if you're making a two-wheeler, and if a two-wheeler is passing all the tests, and if you are subjecting it to with reference to that certificate, if you're subjecting it to the FAME scheme, and if the FAME verifies your certificate, and if it has confirmed that your vehicle is meeting all the test regulation standards as per the certification norms, with reference to that, they will be checking on with your battery capacity, your battery warranty period, how safe your battery is, and what is the actual price of your vehicle. They will be calculating some percentage of amount at which they can allocate few subsidy for your vehicle based upon these kind of parameters. So with reference to these parameters, what they'll be doing is they'll be issuing you a money if you are making a vehicle of 3,000 numbers per month, we can assume. So for each vehicle, if you are being allocated with a subsidy of 20,000 or 25,000 for one vehicle, if you're making it for 3,000 vehicles, for each and every vehicle, you will be receiving it a subsidy. So that will make you a major benefit for further investment. So that's why all are very competent, and they are moving on with the FAME scheme also. So that also we have to take it into major consideration. So when we are designing an EV components, it will be distinguished into two types. One is the mechanical key components, and the another one is the electrical key components. So mechanical key components is nothing but you already know it's general frame, your fork, your front suspension, your handlebar for steering the vehicle, and your rear suspension for better comfort and cushioning, your swing arm which connects your motor, rear tire, and your chassis, and the rims and tires, the brakes, your plastic panels for aesthetic looks. These are all the mechanical key components which has been covered. For this, when you're getting the FAME subsidy, they'll be asking a separate form for these mechanical and electrical key components, getting all the details like what is the actual make, where is your supplier, and what is his address. You are having a separate document for that itself. So these are the key components for what they will be asking these supplier details, because the recent amendment is like all about 80 to 85% of the components that whatever you're using in EV should be made purely indigenous. It shouldn't be imported. So these are the complete major key points which has been issued by the MORTH. So on basis of that only, the testing agencies, when you're applying it for FAME also, what they'll be doing is, they'll be checking on whether your all major 80% of the components which has been covered under that FAME subsidy. Like you leave the motor, you leave the battery. Apart from that, you can make the other components indigenous itself. Like frame, your mechanical components, it should be strictly within indigenous limit. So that's that they will be strictly evaluating. Since there is no future electric setup and it's currently under progress, Indian a nation or country is currently under progress. So we can't be able to assure that that should also be 100% indigenous. So they are giving some cushioning allowances like your battery, your motors, your battery management system. Those can be imported from the other countries like Japan, China, or Germany, or wherever you're getting as per your convenience. So you can import them directly, but you should have a test certificate report which should meet out the actual spec as per the Indian norms. So the actual key consideration factor, what the testing agency will completely focus. So you have to currently be aware about that also. And next one will be of IP rating. IP rating will be generally carried out in AED, Automotive Electronics Department. They'll be submitting your vehicle for the VRDE test track, and they'll be completely immersing your motor to a depth of 0.5 meters to 1 meters with the water completely filled inside that pit. Your motor will be submersed inside that pit with the level of, as I have said, 0.5 meters or 1 meters as per A038 rule. And that motor, as per IEC 60529, should be well IP rated, which is nothing but what you see. It is like how it is generally given to the motor only. How protective is the dust and the water. The motor is located at the bottom of the vehicle, and in conditions, it will get completely immersed inside the water. So at that time, what will happen is everything is electrical. If the water enters that casing, in case of improper sealing, what will happen is your due to the electrical components, there will be a current flow through the stator and rotor. Your motor will get short, your wire will get short, or your motor may fail due to the water being getting filled inside the motor. So that we have to be very aware of. So for that only, they will be just denoting an IP rating for each and every specifications. You have to be very, very aware while you're designing a motor, because motor is not only about designing and not only about technical key consideration, it's also about IP rating. So you have to check whether how it is resisting the dust entry and how it is protecting it itself from the water when it's been immersed completely inside the water to a depth of 1 meters or 2 meters as per the rule. So based upon that safety only, they will be giving you the IP rating, which is nothing but your safety rating of the motor. If you are saying motor rating to be IP 7,868 already given in the slide. What does it actually mean? So, should be protected from dust and water. Actually, 20 IP rating, say for example, if you're having 60 or 68, the first digit of that number represents is it free from dust. Second digit of number represent whether is it free from dust. These are the table. The IP rating will also be taken DSP test. So this will be passed. Generally, in motors, when you are taking, we'll be going on with two types at general for a two-wheeler and three-wheeler vehicles. It's of BDC and BLDC motors. BDC motors we have been eliminated and we have been moved on to BLDC motors because BLDC gives us much more efficiency than BDC motors because we don't have any contact brushes and thereby the friction can be eliminated. So that is a major thing that why we are due to that advantage we are preferring the brushless DC motor. And in general, when we take it on with two-wheelers, generally hub motor, that I can see in the image. This is the hub motor. And when you take on the interior view of the hub motor, you will be having the stator and the rotor. You can see the magnets and the rings. It is generally of the DC motor that it is working. And the blue, yellow, and green terminals that whatever are getting, it is of the supply lines. So since those supply lines and the electrical connections are available on the stator, it shouldn't get because of the dust entry or the water entry inside the motor. If it's not properly sealed, your motor is unsafe because your wire terminals will get short. So you have to be. That's why we are defining an IP rating to be very high. So in general, we are currently moving on with lithium-ion vehicles, batteries for every vehicle because earlier we were using lead-acid batteries, but now even in testing and approval certifications, due to the vehicle weightment issue, the vehicle is weight of the vehicle is getting very high. Because of that, my performance is getting affected. So these are the actual complaints and considerations what the actual competitors were facing when we were developing a vehicle. So at that point, at that key consideration factors, when they are taking that into consideration, all the competitors just moved on to lithium-ion batteries because when you take a lead-acid batteries, your weight will be very, very more, and your lead-acid battery won't be available as a single pack. It will be available as only a 12-volt or a 6-volt battery. So if you want a vehicle to run with a 60-volt battery, you have to connect 4 to 5 batteries in series or in parallel in such a way that your vehicle range will extend or your motor power output will develop due to the battery capacity and your high voltage. So because of that, if you keep a 5 battery storage in one vehicle, you need lots of space, 1 point. And the next one is your vehicle weight will increase. And the third one is your vehicle performance and speed with respect to the vehicle actual payload, that is your external load. If you're say for example, you're designing a vehicle for a single seater or for a double seater, based upon that consideration, your speed will also decrease. Already your speed is decreased due to overweight of the vehicle, and if you make another excessive payload, your speed will further decrease, where your L, M, and T and no parameters may not meet the actual requirement. So in order to make all the requirements meet, we need a very lightweight vehicle in order to improve and enhance the performance and the speed. So on the basis of that only, many competitors have been moved on to lithium-ion batteries. So major advantage of lithium-ion batteries is you can all buy the 60-volt batteries within a single constituent pack, and you can save space. That is a major advantage of lithium-ion battery. First major advantage. The next major advantage is due to light weight, your speed will increase and your battery range of the lithium-ion is very much higher when compared to that of your lead-acid battery. So these are the two major advantages when we take on to the lead acid batteries. So because of these advantages, the competitor has been moving to the lithium ion batteries instead of going for lead acid batteries. So as I have said, when you are subjecting a vehicle for any gradability test, your battery or your IC engine plays a very vital role, because without the higher initial torque, you can't be able to climb a grade properly. So you need an initial torque or a pickup torque, what you call it as, for a vehicle to be very high. So for that, instead of if you are designing an IC engine vehicle, what you have to do is you have to just initially increase the torque in order to pass the grade climb test. Or if you are completely converting your vehicle into pure electric, so at that time your battery capacity should be very high, and it should be able to carry your vehicle as per your design load for the expected specified range as per IS AS007 gradability test. So with respect to that test only, the actual considerations will be taken into factors from the test agencies. So based upon that, your battery has to be a very major source, and it has to serve a purpose in order to make the vehicle climb. So you have to design a battery in such a way. So these kind of relevant tests will be carried. These kind of relevant factors will also be considered checking on with gradability. So this is nothing but the charging station. About how the charger plugs will be, how the charger plug will be connected to the bike. It's like same like how you connect a phone charger to your 3-pin socket. It will be available in same kind. And next one will be a converter. Converter is nothing but it just step downs your 60 volt input battery line to a 12 volt output, because your vehicle's lighting system and horns are very miniature components that can't be able to withstand a very high load. It should have only a minimal load. So if you have to step down your voltage and your current, so it acts as a step down transformer. It just converts a 60 volt 7.5 amps. Say for example you are giving 10 amps or 12 amps. If you are giving a higher current, and if it's being currently fed from the battery to the converter, it just steps down. It just steps down and it just converts everything into the miniature voltage and current. So for that purpose only we'll be using the converter. And converter won't be interlinked to the motor. It will be only interlinked to the auxiliary systems such as like horns, lighting systems, indicators, etc. So this will be majorly considered in SHL, Safety and Homologation Laboratory. So the controller is a major key factor, where from the battery, whenever you're getting a direct 60 volt line, this actually monitors and gives the speed, relative speed to the motor, because controller is nothing but with respect to your throttle position sensor or your throttle input, that whatever you're giving from your hand, that is sensed by a means of microcontroller inside this controller unit. So it just whatever the throttle position sensor angle, it just sense that the TPS just sense at what angle you're making the throttle, and from that throttle it just sends a signal to the controller, and from the controller you just get the output based upon this angle rating. You can deliver this RPM to the motor, and this motor will generate this much of speed. So your controller, to be very short, it just gets the input from the battery and it just drives your motor directly with the 60 volt based upon throttle positioning adjustments. So instrument cluster is you're driving a vehicle, you're just controlling your motor speed by your means of throttle position sensor and your throttling unit that which you're giving. So based upon that throttle angle, what speed you're giving will be monitored on the instrument cluster. There are two types of instrument cluster. One is the analog and one is the digital. This kind of test will also be carried out in VEL, Vehicle Evaluation Laboratory, like how much is the speed is reading, whether the speed is within the limit, or is it within the expected limit. Those kind of tests will also be carried out in VEL, Vehicle Evaluation Laboratory, while they are running it in test tracks. So this is nothing but charger, suitable to your battery design. Whenever you're making, you have to just select the charger also accordingly to that, based upon your voltage and current. and your BVMS, that whatever you design. So this is a major higher priority to that. So you can see the electric vehicles. The third one is completely involved with myself. I just started off with that vehicle only for the vehicle certification system, the Zeal vehicle, which you can see on the right top end. So that is the actual vehicle that which I have started on with my current project, and it's completely running on road with the CBS combi brake systems that which I have implemented as an safety norm equipment, and also with reference to that, I have just made all the vehicles to meet the AS approval standards. So I just nearly took around 6 to 7 months to pass the test for a simple two-wheeler. Since it has been moving to a high-speed vehicle, it just took around 6 to 7 months, and it all got delayed because of the EMI and EMC test, which is very bit difficult to get passed through. Other 11 tests, we can just make it succeed within a maximum of 1.5 to 2 months. But EMI and EMC is quite a very big challenge for an EV, generally whatever you are taking. So we have to be very focused on that. So according to the presentation point of view, that's it. And I also have to just share you a few of the slides under what kind of test codes you have to test your vehicle. So I'm just giving you the data. Actually, as per the testing agencies, what they'll be doing is they'll be just referring your vehicle whether is it applicable as per this reference standard only. So when you see that, you'll be having your 3 vehicle evaluation laboratory centers. One is the SHL, what I've already discussed, the Safety and Homologation Laboratory. And the first one is your Vehicle Evaluation Laboratory, VEL test. And the last one is your AED, Automotive Electronics Department. So as I've already discussed, these are the actual things that which will be actually carried out in-house and also in the onto the track. So on basis of that, you're being just denoted with the reference standards. So on the basis of this reference standard only, you can be able to check your vehicle and you can validate whether is it as per those standards. When you take this reference standard and you refer it, you can be able to get a clear picture for each and every norms. How much should be, how much the value should be. Either it can be a minimum value or it can be a maximum value. How much it should be. All kinds of tests will be available as per this reference. So when you take on with vehicle laboratory, as I've already said, it's based on the physical verification, your dimension test, your vehicle weightment, how much your weight is with respect to your center of gravity of your vehicle, how much load does your front axle bear and how much load does your rear axle bear, and your brake test, and your speedometer calibration, which I have recently told you. So as per IS 11827. So what they'll be doing is, say for example, if you're just making your design speed of your vehicle to be 50 kilometers per hour or 60 kilometers per hour, what is the allowable error in the speedometer display? Those kind of deviational permissible limits can be calculated using IS 11827. And the next one will be pass by noise measurement, IS 3028. As I've already discussed, whether is the dB limit available within the limit as per the specified standard. Those kind of tests will be available in pass by noise. The next one is the telltales and indicators, which will be checked in the display, like whether when you're making an indication, your right indication arrow should blink or your left indication arrow should blink, and when you look on with your vehicle display, you will be having those kinds of stuff. The same thing is applicable over here. AWT test, AS003, and the VIN, vehicle identification number. VIN is nothing but a chassis number. It should be punched or it should be etched on your vehicle frame, and whenever they are asking your vehicle reference, based on a vehicle reference only, they will be checked. Because most of the people they may actually show one vehicle at the test agencies, and then they will another one vehicle to the test agency and they will get the certification. But that is actually equivalent to being like a forgery act to that case. So they won't allow that kind of act to be happening inside the test agencies. So because in order to avoid that, they'll be doing is they'll be just denoting the VIN identification number, vehicle identification number, with the month and year of manufacturing, which should be external frame. So they'll be checking on with that. So you have to make your vehicle identification number also etched or punched on the chassis, be visible to the observer. So these kind of tests will be carried out in the vehicle evaluation laboratory. So as I have already homologation laboratory test, you will be having these kinds of tests, like how much height this mirror has been installed, how much height has the horn installed, and from how much height has been the lights and other signaling devices like indicators has been installed, and the pillion handhold which is available at the back. Yeah, everything is safety to be open, and these safety kind of relevant tests will be carried out in SHL, safety and homologation laboratory tests, as per the reference standard which you have been given in the right hand side column. And the next one will be the AED, Automotive Electronics Department test, carrying out the range test in the chassis dynamometer and the electric consumption test, the constructability and safety test, and your electromagnetic compatibility, what I have already said, which is a very quite difficult challenge when you're subjecting it to the way. A bit difficult over here in EV. So that EMI and EMC test will be carried out as per AS004. So these are the major tests while you're submitting the vehicle for the approval in the vehicle level point of view. The same thing is available for the component level point of view also. See the difference between the vehicle level, in vehicle level test, you will be taking the complete vehicle for the approval submission. The component level, you will be taking for the vehicle level submission. So say for example, if I have to get one specific component to be, I'm not a vehicle manufacturer, but so if you are a component manufacturer for one of the lead EVs, so at that point, what you have to do, the tires, horns, bulbs that in which currently use, and the wheel rims, all taken into consideration, and you have to subject the components to the test as per this reference standard which is given on the right hand side column. Level test is different from your component level test. Component level is like if you are a component dealer and if you are subjecting it to one of the vehicle manufacturers, you have to get a component certified and you have to sell it to the vehicle or a vehicle in such a way that your component is 100% safe and assured. You can't tell it by words. You have to just to them. You can be able to sell a component or a product. So with reference to that, this has to be met out with the reference standard. You have to get the components certified as per this regulatory standards. So this is the actual difference between the vehicle level and the component level test that which you have to check on to while you're submitting your vehicle or a component for an approval. And I'll just show you one video. So currently carrying heavy vehicle terrain setup, and this is the first prototype that with which undergo the test. This is the gradability test. You can see due to the initial pickup torque, it should climb the gradability. climb from point A to point B without any backflow or stops. So they have given 15, 20 degree slopes. You can just notice that identifications on the road painted. Based upon the angle of inclination, they'll just make the grade climbing ability. So this is one video, and let's say about vehicles. See, this is equal to construction. And compatibility. This is so, but so yeah, they'll be out on tracks. So this is not hearing is
So sorry for interruption, sir. Sir, actually the voice is breaking, sir, and also video is getting passed, sir.
just now.
Since the video is shared, the bandwidth is consumes more, I think so.
Okay.
So, dear participants, due to network issue, the SARS, the resource person is left out. So he'll be joining soon. So if you're having any kind of queries, please let you chat in chat box or post your queries in chat box. So the session feedback link will be shared in today's session. The first session will be shared in next session. Mr. Karthikeyan sir, so your video is is on. So kindly off your video camera, sir.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Venkateswalu sir. Yes, sir. You're audible,
Yeah,
sir.
actually, due to the technical issue, it got disconnected.
Sure, sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay. Sir, shall we move for the questionnaire session, sir?
Yeah, that's all. I have just made on with my session.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just made on with the session. So I was about to ask whether if there's any query relevant. So before
Yes,
that,
sir.
the call
Having
got disconnected.
sir, no issue, sir. So first of all, I love to thank you, sir, for your wonderful session. So the participants has raised a few questions from their end. So I just read out the question, sir.
Okay. So please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, the question from participant is retrofitting of bicycle to e-cycle conversion requires certification, and what is the speed limit, and what are the protocols, sir?
That's what I've already said. Because the retrofitting also generally requires a certification as per SSL standards, and it is also applicable with the general rule of two-wheeler and three-wheeler standard codes that what we have told already, and also it has been applicable under CMVR 1989 Act. So based on that, we have to get completely the retrofitting vehicles also to be approved as per that standard, and also vehicles and speed rating that whatever it may be, it is you who have to decide whether it can be of greater than 70 or less than 70. It is the user-defined, requirement, design requirement. Say for example, you can even make it to 70 kmph lesser, or you can even make it to 70 kmph greater. That is not an issue. So based on the loads and parameters as per the standards, if you are going even for the retrofitting also, you need a certification.
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So the last question from participant, sir.
Thank you.
So to launch a new designed
Okay.
vehicle in our country protocols, or it is complex to compare to other countries?
No, it is not yet complex when compared to other countries, because the rules that what they have given in our country is very quite lenient when compared to international standards. The only greater challenge will be a few of the relevant tests that which I've already mentioned you, the complete EV frequency band test, because we are not currently undergoing any advancements or researches in detail and the electrical domain. So there is one thing, and which we are currently undertaking in progress in the recent times only. So, but in the developed nations like China and US, they have already been currently gone through that. So, on basis of that point and aspects, when we consider our point and our standards is more lenient when compared to that of the international standards. The same thing and codes and practices have been followed in a different methodology, but when comparative to the IEC international standards, ours is quite easier and risk-free to get passed through. So that is my actual suggestion that which you have to keep here.
So thank you so much, sir, for your patient answering, sir, from the participants.
Thank you.
So participants, we are came for the end of session. So at this juncture, I thank our today's resource person, Mr. Venkateswalu, for accepting our invitation and sparing his valuable time to give an excellent session on testing and certification. So we are very much honored, sir, to have you in this session. So thank you very much, sir, for delivering the sessions.